Hello and welcome to this tutorial in which I'm going to show you how to create this effect of particles moving around in a beam of light. So how are we going to go about creating this effect? Well, we're going to do it with particle systems and we're going to build those particle systems entirely from scratch. First of all though, we're going to create a background, and in order to do that I'm going to come to my library, my generators tab, and I'm going to select clouds and I'm going to apply that. And I'm going to come to the inspector and I'm going to edit the cloud gradient, and at the white end I'm going to change this color to a dark desaturated blue, something like that. And then we're going to turn the horizontal and vertical scale down to the lowest amount. Then we're going to come to the library, from the blur menu select zoom blur like so, and we're going to take the on-screen control and move it up to the top left here where our light source is going to be. I'll come to the inspector and I'll crank the zoom blur amount up until I get quite a nice effect of light play. I could make it more complicated by coming to the cloud generator and adding in some extra colors at some point, so we can get a pretty sophisticated effect just using that clouds generator and the blur filter. Okay, let's add the next component, which is the lens flare, and I'm going to apply that like so, and I'm going to use the adjust item tool to move the center of the lens flare up to my top corner here. Make a few quick adjustments there, turn down the ring. The outer color I don't much like. I'm going to pick something more in tune with our scene, something like that. Increase the intensity of that light source like so. Okay, reasonably happy with that. And I'm going to move on to my particles. I'm going to come to my library and come to the content folder, and down here I'm going to type in the search box, I'm going to type dust. That gives us 6 PNGs. I'm going to select them all and I'm going to hit apply, and those will pop into a new group. I'm actually going to turn them off because I don't want to see them as themselves, and I'll select dust 1 and hit E, and that immediately creates an emitter out of that dust particle. I'm going to drag it to a new group like so, and I am going to set the blend mode of that group to screen, and I'm going to come to my emitter tab and I'm going to scale those particles right down, and I'm going to come to the colorize tab somewhere up here, a little bit of blue. Okay, and I'm going to increase the scale slightly to 10 maybe, and increase the scale randomness. And now you can see I've got particles. At the moment they're coming out of a point and I don't want that. I'm going to come to the shape menu and select rectangle, and I'm going to set the arrangement to random fill. And then in order that the particles are emitted right the way across the frame, I'm going to come down here and set the width and height to be the same as my project, and that's 1280 by 720. And now you can see there are particles everywhere across the frame. Okay, now what else do we need to do? We don't want particles that come into being, which could potentially look a bit odd. So I'm going to turn the birth rate of my particles down to nothing, and instead I'm going to set the initial value to 200. I need to be careful not to set these values too high in order not to slow this tutorial right down, but obviously the more particles you have, the better the whole thing is going to look in the end. You'll notice that the particles die halfway through and we don't want that, so I'm going to go to the end of my timeline and I am going to increase the life until I see particles at the end as well. That's great. Okay, but now those particles, I'm just starting in the center and being blown out to the sides. And I don't want that. I want something where the particles actually drift up towards my bright light in the top left-hand corner. I could do that with simulations, simulation behaviors I should say, but I'm going to do that a different way, which is a handy tip to know. I'm going to narrow the emission range down to 45 degrees. And you see that's now made the particles go off in just one direction. At the moment that's going left to right. I don't want that. All I then have to do is change the emission angle. I'm going to change that to 150, and you'll see that those particles drift up towards the light. Very nice. That's starting to look pretty good, I think. I'm going to, just so I'm ready for later on down the line, I'm going to add some spin to these particles. We turn the value up to 25, the scale rather up to 25, you'll see that at the moment they all stay in the same orientation, and that doesn't look convincing at all when you've got larger particles. So I'm going to increase the spin to 45 degrees, and in order that they don't all spin in the same way, I'm going to increase the spin randomness as well. So now they will spin. In fact, we could probably increase the spin value for those. Let's go up to 90. Spin and spin in opposite directions randomly. When we bring the scale down to 10, we probably won't see that, but everything, all these little details actually make a difference. Okay, so how to add more particles, make it look more interesting. I could simply make a new emitter for each one of these dust cells, but actually I'm going to economize a bit, and I'm going to drag dust 2 into that emitter, and so now we've actually got 2 particle cells and 1 emitter. The scale of this one is obviously much too big again. Let's bring that down to something a lot more manageable, and let's increase the scale randomness. And let's colorize it. Again, picking a color off our scene. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to reduce the opacity a bit, because that one just looks a bit too bright. Dust is often likely to be see-through, so I'm going to reduce the opacity by clicking on that top bar. I didn't actually do that the right way. What I should have done, I'll show you later on. Because now I've got to again turn the birthrate down, turn the initial number up, and worry about all that stuff that I could have saved myself a lot of bother with. Spin, spin. Okay. So there we go. I'm going to reduce the speed of this lot down to 50 so they don't move as fast. I also need to do the whole business with the increasing the life. So that's my second lot of particles. I'm now going to duplicate that emitter like so, and instead of making my first mistake, I'm going to turn off the first emitter so we can see what's going on. What I should have done is I should have duplicated the first cell instead of just adding a new particle to it, and then I could do what I'm now going to do, which is to overwrite these 2 cells with new content. So I'm going to come to dust 3 and stick it into 1, and dust 4 and stick it into 2. And now instantly I've got all those values all set just as they were before. All I need to do is come in and make some fine-tune adjustments to the scale. So I'm going to increase the scale of those. I think I'll reduce that speed of that one even further, and I shall probably reduce the initial number on those because I don't really like the look of those. They're too obviously the same. Come to my second particle. That's again quite small. Let's have some small particles like that, and let's really reduce the speed of those so they don't get dragged as far. That's nice. I like that. And turn that one back on and turn my second emitter back on. So now I've got a couple of layers of particles, two different emitters. So I'm going to duplicate the emitter again, and then I'm going to add dust 5 to this one and dust 6 to that one. Turn off the other two emitters, see what I'm doing. Turn off dust 2 to see these ones. These again need some adjustment to the opacity to come down here. Reduce that opacity till it looks much more dust-like, like so. And that scale is probably not too bad. I think probably we don't need as many of these. Just about 100 will probably do. And my other particle, well, I quite like these. I quite like the amount of detail you see in these, but that means we don't really want too many because it'll be very obvious. I think we can come down to about 10 of those. And let's have a lot of speed randomness in this, so these just do their own thing and look much more like large, close to the lens affairs. Okay, so really quite quickly we've built up a whole set of particles. And now let's have a look at how we can make this look a bit more interesting. I'm going to do this the easy way, which is to turn on a light, and this will create 3D layers. So I'm going to switch to 3D, and I'm going to move my light up to where it ought to be, here. I'm going to increase the fall off start of that light, and it's not quite illuminating the way I want, because that's because it's a bit too close in Z space to those particles. So I'm going to set it to 250, and you'll see it spread out. I need to adjust that light again a bit more to get a bit more fall off, like that. And now that scene has really come to life because we've got realistic looking light on those particles. So I'm going to crank that up so that the ones closer get a lot more of a blast, and we're almost there. So what I now want to do, just to finish it off, is offset some of these layers in Z space, so that when we add a camera it will look a little bit more 3D, nice depth. So I'm going to bring this one forward. This is the one with a large elements. Maybe bring it forward even more. Let's go to 200. Let's set this middle one to 100, like that. So now we've got 200 for that one, 100 for the middle one, and 0 for that one. We could even move this group back. Let's move this group back minus 100, and then just increase the scale to compensate. And now let's add a camera, and what we're going to do is apply a camera dolly behavior to that. And what I want to do is to dolly backwards. So we do that. But my initial position of my camera then wants to be 200. And that's actually looking quite nice. And one final thing we can do is to come to the camera and set the depth of field, and I'm going to set it to 100. And you'll see something quite interesting, which is that we move out of focus, from out of focus into focus and back again. Quite nice as the focal plane changes. Let me just do a quick RAM preview so you can see that. So there you have it. Obviously I could spend a lot more time finessing those particle layers, and I'm sure if you were doing a project like this you would spend a lot more time. It's all about just building up those layers with care. Okay, there you go. Thanks very much for watching.